This is Kosmographia, the Randall Carlson podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kosmographia, the Randall Carlson podcast, episode 107. And we have been discussing the mound complexes in North America. And I think we're going to continue on that today. Right, Randall?
Well, that sounds like a really good idea.
That's the plan. I had this plan written out, planned out.
Well,
going to follow the plan.
Yep. Well, I'm glad somebody is handling that because I had no idea. No, I'm actually prepared to pick up kind of where we left off. We were just getting into some interesting stuff when the clock ran out. So I thought we would continue along those lines.
Yep.
We had
just a note in passing. Last week we discussed some of the mounds and earthworks in Ohio.
Yes.
So a news story this past week, those sites in Ohio have been placed on the World Heritage List.
Overdue.
And does that mean we will be denied access then from this point on to all of the
big fences are going up?
The big fences are going up. The gates are getting locked. Well, what does that actually mean?
I think it gives them some degree of protection, but mostly it's just a designation. Draw a lot of tourists.
Well, it's probably a good thing. But yeah, I mean, you know, as you start getting into it and you begin to appreciate the scale of the phenomena, it's quite mind-boggling. And it really does, to me anyway, demand a rewrite of history in the Western Hemisphere for sure. And I mean, all the stuff that has been disclosed in South America, in the rainforest, hiding under the rainforest, there's monumental earthworks that are very much like the ones we're looking at here.
Yeah, those LiDAR discoveries are amazing. Going down through the jungle canopy.
They are. So, we were looking at the Etowah mounds, I think, and then we started talking about Scioto. Need to learn how to pronounce these words properly. I think we'll dive right into doing a screen share.
Yeah, South Central Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Looked at how some of them related to the margin of the ice sheet.
Yep. Okay. We did that. And then this one we were looking at, this is at the Etowah. You can see that right over here in the right is the Etowah River. It's a very beautiful and quite peaceful setting. Anyways, there's Bradley standing on the center of Mound C, looking to the west, and the hills come on. You can't quite make it out here, but there's a little saddle right there in the skyline right behind Bradley, and that pretty much marks the winter solstice sunrise. Was that it? Yes, I believe that was it. And so I'm standing on the center of Mound B, and over to our left is Mound A, and all of this out here was the plaza. And many of these mound complexes, that was one of the elements. Do you remember the elements we went through? That are the compositional elements of the mound complexes. There were truncated pyramids, right? There were long barrows. What are long barrows? Well, they're just elongated mounds, and they can be serpentine, but not necessarily. They can be perfectly straight. Then there, you're looking down at Mound B with the Etowah River flowing peacefully there in the background. This is a very nice place in the spring and the fall. And we went back to here where from this aerial view where you can see the remnant of the ancient canal that wrapped around. And I still wonder what the function of the canal was. I speculated, and it's pretty well-reasoned speculation. I'm not the only one that speculated, of course, that the earth to create the mound structures themselves is what was excavated to create the moat. So it looked like what they were doing was bringing water in from the river to fill the moat. And then we saw a picture, I believe that was, we already saw this, right? The passageway on a much grander scale. So this is give you a sense of the scale of the Etowah Mound. This is the Grand Mound or the Great Mound, and it's a big pile of dirt. And I've seen the calculations on it. Let me see, were we on the trip together when we went to, no, we weren't. When we went on the tour of Poverty Point with, do you remember his name, Brad? The ranger that took us out and we spent a couple hours out?
No, I don't. I
Eric?
know I have his business card. Yeah, I was going to say Mark, so maybe there's a C in there or a K in there.
An R and a K. Yeah, I think I might have a business card as well. We're going to get up and we're going to be talking about that here before the evening's over. But so this is now the question, and you can actually kind of see here, notice this profile. You'll see this same profile when we come up to the slides of Cahokia. You see where you have kind of a flat top and then it kind of comes down to this terrace or this shelf. Almost, you could almost picture, if you put a head here, you'd almost have the profile of the Sphinx. Can you see that? And of course, the trees are gone now. They've cleared the trees because I would imagine when this mound was in use, there were no trees growing on it. And that's an aerial view. And here you can see the remnant of the moat. Let's see, would have been right over here coming around. And then I believe if I just back up here. Well, we saw all those. Oh, and then compared, to Silbury Hill and the Great Miamisburg Mound, just to show the comparisons between, England and North America. And interestingly, as we'll find out, the mounds themselves were not just heaped piles of earth heaped up. That's important to keep in mind. They were revetted. You know what that means? Revetted, revetted. So there was layers of packed earth material, that followed the contour of the hill. So it wasn't just a pile. It was very carefully placed layers, and the layers, as we'll see, were distinctively different materials. And so they had the same process going on at Silbury Hill as in the North American earthworks. So not only were they, having a similar morphology, if you will, their construction had parallels. So throughout this entire process of looking at these, to me, the question that's raised is, well, are we looking at something here that, evolved independent? I mean, did the earthworks in England evolve, and the motive for those and the reason for them and the incentive to do them and all of that evolve independently of North America? Well, if they did, to me, it seems rather coincidental, perhaps. If not, then what is the story? Now, one of the differences is that there could be up to 2,000 years separating a lot of the earthworks in North America from the ancient earthworks in Britain and the British Isles, and even in northwestern Europe. However, as we're going to see when we look at Poverty Point and some of the others, they can go back as old as Old Kingdom of Egypt, when some of the earlier examples of monumental earthworks were being constructed in North America.
And what was the one? Was the one they dug on the college campus that was like
LSU mounds?
LSU, yeah. That was dated
14,000, yeah, something like that.
It was old.
Yes,
very old. In fact, predated anything else. I mean, went back literally to Younger Dryas.
Yeah.
Yeah, were you on that trip? We met him. We went in and had the tour. He took us into his office. No, I guess you guys weren't there.
We weren't there for that one.
No, that was when we were coming
with George.
Yeah, we were out there with George
yeah.
Howard and coming back. That's right. Okay, so this what's up on the screen now is this is Ocmulgee. And you can see so many of them, they have the larger ones will have these ramps coming up, which is a very typical feature that you see in, in Mayan architecture. They have the flat top again, which is characteristic of Mayan architecture, truncated pyramids. This is the passage grave right over here. And look at this. This was probably similar thing. A type of a canal was probably filled with water. It's the scar that was left over from excavations. So, see,
I think we did look at this last episode.
Yeah, we did.
Talked about this, yeah.
We talked about the river here and the proximity to the water. So just picking up kind of where we left off. Now let's keep moving on because we did see this. And then we got to Scioto and we looked at some interesting examples from Squire and Davis's work. And this is where, you really begin to get the magnitude of this phenomenon. I want you to look at this up here, 18 acres. Now, this is a virtually perfect geometric circle. And then you have this interesting, it's almost like a flattened octagon, right? And then you have these almost, what we say, like barrows. You have like this looks smaller, but this is 300 feet in diameter. So this is a football field that can fit in here. So the scale of these things back when they all were still existent is pretty mind-boggling. And there you can see what's left. It's basically a shadow, almost like a ghost figure. That's what's there. This was probably taken, 1938. So from the time that Squire and Davis did their survey, which would have been 1846, it says up here, to this 1938. So less than 100 years. It's been pretty much erased. So what were you going to comment, Russ?
The tragedy.
In the drawing. Yeah, in the drawing, there's a bunch of filled in circles on the inside of the flattened octagon. Are those little mounds?
Those are little. Yeah, those are mounds. And they're not that little either.
Very strange.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So, and then you have the apertures. Now, are those apertures just randomly placed? Or is there some system to the placement of apertures and the axis? So you have an axis here along the if you draw from, let's say, the top of this mound across this mound, then you go through this aperture here, and then it looks like you're going to go through pretty damn close to the center of this circle. Now that circle is 20 acres. I could do a quick calculation here. 20 acres would be.
There was no evidence that any of these had any structures inside them or anything like that, or
has that even been looked at?
At that, yeah.
It's a farm field now, so has anyone ever excavated in there to find out if there was?
Well, okay. So the question would be, if there was a burial, would the burial have been within the below the pre-existing surface of the ground, or would it have been within the mound itself?
I'm
thinking if it was in the mound itself, whatever was there is gone. The question is then you might be raising is, could there have been something else that was buried beneath the mound?
Or, were there actual structures, like wooden buildings or something in there? I don't know.
Well, we know there were on top. Yes, there were timber structures on top of the truncated pyramids. Yes. And in fact, I think they at the Moundville in Alabama, I believe, if I remember right, they reconstructed.
They reconstructed some.
Yeah, they reconstructed.
What about like standing stones or, posts in the ground like Stonehenge style? Because you have this big circle mound, and it seems like, it's a farm field now. Did they think maybe they were just pulled out because they thought they were just old rotten stumps, or I don't know. Maybe they were just little potholes in the ground.
Well, that's the case at going back to Etowah at Mound C, the one that I showed the picture Brad was standing on.
Yeah.
He was standing right in the center, and there actually is a depression that's pretty much in the center of the surface of that mound, which suggests to me that it probably did once hold some kind of a sighting pole, a foresight that could be sighted against the. So you would have had the foresight, which was the pole. Then you would have had the back sight, which was the notch in the horizon, and then you would have had the sun beyond that. So you can picture that in a way. You had the pole, and most likely, at some point, maybe there was some epoch in there where the sun would be poised. If you had a pole, the sun would be poised right on top of the pole. Okay, so let's see. Pi r squared is area. So if I take the square root of that and divide by pi, okay, so 300 feet. I was going to calculate the area. I mean, I'd like to know the diameter of a circle that encloses 20 acres. So if this is 250 feet in diameter, which it says right there, 250 feet in diameter. So that itself is a pretty big, impressive circular mound. So then what's the diameter of this one? It's got to be it's got to be 4 times this. Got to be over 1,000 feet. In fact,
1,080.
I was just going to say, but Brad beat me to it. But yeah, 1,080.
1080 feet. So if that is a specifically significant number that they were going for, then that implies they're using the foot.
Well, yeah. You're right. Times pi. That was what it would seem like. Okay, now divide by 43,560. Yeah. Okay, so you guys remember now, this is a number you should remember, which you guys probably remember, 43,560 square feet in an acre. Right?
I always remember that it's close to 43,200, but I never can remember the exact number.
Well, it is close, but it's a little bit more. Okay, let's keep moving on here.
That's all I'm saying.
I've called that the sacred acre, but I don't know if anybody ever used that.
The sacred acre is 43,000.
Acre
it.
is within the word sacred.
Duly noted. That was a good one, Brad.
Dang, Brad.
So now let's look at this one that's by the Scioto River. And we have a circle that's not a perfect circle. Maybe for whatever its purpose was, it didn't need to be. Notice there's a cluster of apertures, means of ingress and egress. And this one is 28 acres. So it's bigger than the previous one. And I would believe this is gone now. Mound City, Ohio. Kyle, if you're sitting there, you might try looking up Mound City, Ohio, and see if there's anything left of it. And then we have this rounded square of 13 acres over here. And there's a lot of little mounds inside of it, but they're not that little, right?
That does look more like a monument yard or a graveyard or something.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got an enclosure and then a bunch of small mounds sort of scattered in there.
And then this circle up here is 250 feet in diameter. Mound City, Ohio.
Did we talk about that? About how the openings are pointing in the openings of the sort of the wonky circle down there are pointing in specific directions, like the solstices or the equinoxes.
Yeah, it was. We were talking about how it might be.
Yeah.
It could be. I mean, okay, so winter solstice, maybe perhaps the top of the mound, which looks like it's pretty much the center, more or less.
Does.
And we could have been a viewing point out through the apertures. And so this is in the southwest. So I would guess this one right here would come fairly close to the winter solstice sunset on, from this latitude. But we could easily figure that out. All I need to know is the latitude, and I could drop it into my my astronomy software.
And if it is a burial mound, that little mound in the very middle with that huge ring around it, seems like whoever was buried in there would have been very important.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And the fact that there were burials, and then of course we've talked about this. You got to distinguish between original burials and intrusive burials. But there's the fact that they had people buried, in particular people of importance, does not contradict the possibility that they had other functions,
other uses,
uses and other functions.
And I mean, the ancestor veneration was a big part of a lot of these people's cultures, and so having their ancestors there at the center of a sacred site where they did astronomy makes total sense.
Makes total sense.
They're connected to the sky and to the.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So 500 feet to the inch. Is that what it is?
500 feet to the inch. Yeah.
500 feet to the inch. Okay. Now this is interesting. The Hopeton work, Ross County, Ohio. Diameter of the circle. No, we did see this last week, and I was going to correct this, and I didn't. Diameter of the circle is 1,050 feet. But the square, notice the area here is 20 acres. The area here is 20 acres. And so when you go back to this one, 20 acres. So here you have a circle, 20 acres, and here you have a circle, 20 acres. Now, obviously, they're working from the same set of schematics here. And I don't know the dating on these, and I like this causeway. So this causeway, we saw that, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah.
Some of these, we were looking at some of this stuff. We're doing some episodes right now on our show about megalithic structures and mounds in UK. And what's the name of it? Is it a cursus? Thyrsus? These long, narrow, enclosed.
Yeah, Thyrsus, I think.
Yeah. Some of this was reminding me of that.
Uh-huh.
He's editing the slide right now, folks.
He's editing it, yes.
Right as
behind the scenes, folks. You got it.
Side of square. Okay, I'm going to have to refigure the side of the square, but I won't do that now. Diameter of circle. Now here's my question. Is that diameter inside diameter or outside diameter?
Or to the middle of the mound, something.
Well, let's look here. I think, what is this showing? It looks to me like this is showing inside diameter of 1,050 feet. So that could put the outside diameter, perhaps if the walls are 15 feet wide at the base, then that puts the outer diameter at 1,080 feet. If that's the case.
And again, we have this implication that they may have been using the foot. Really strange.
It is.
If they were intending to hit that, that specific number.
So 20 acres. So I'm going to try something really quick. So 20 acres times 43,560 means 871,200 square feet to an acre. So if I take the square root of that, okay, 933. So somewhere in some research I did on the Hopeton work, the side of the square was, I think that was it. It was listed at 960 feet across. Because you actually can look, right? You can see that the diameter of the circle is going to be somewhat larger. If you drew tangent lines parallel touching the circle, you would see that the circle's diameter is greater than the length of the square side. Got that? So that's, I think, where the 960. I was looking at other sources, found the 960 was the side of the square, or the distance across the square. And then I did a typo and put it into the circle as well, because it says right here it's 1,050. Ancient work in Liberty Township. Now check this one out. Side of the square. There we go. 1,080 feet. So 1,080 squared, divide by 43,560. Yep, that's it. 27, a square 27 acres is going to be right at 1,080 feet on a side, which then makes the perimeter of the square 44,320 feet. Diameter of the large circle, 1,700 feet. Now that's pretty big. Okay, so that's 5,280 feet in a mile. Divide that by 1,700, and it means that you've got, this is over a third of a mile then.
I wonder how much they were rounding numbers. These drawings look very, precise, but
well, it's hard to say. What were the tolerances of the surveyors back in the 1840s and 50s?
Well, I'll just say this, that the diameter of a circle with an area of 871,200, which would be 20 acres, is 1,053 feet. 1,053.21.
Okay, so
like
rounding it down from 3 feet.
Yeah, and that's if they got the actual area correct.
Yeah, right.
Because they would have had to, they probably got the area from a measurement of the diameter or a measurement of the perimeter or something. I don't know how they did it.
But look at that circle there, that large one. It's 40 acres.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well,
look
it
how
is
beautiful it is.
Yeah.
How do you draw a 40-acre circle on the ground?
Well,
that's really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, and notice also here there was what is this? It says the low bottoms here. So you have this gully that's coming right up here. So was the gully, I presume, was already there when they did this? I'm guessing.
I would assume so.
I'm just saying. Just think about this process. It's 40 acres across.
40 acres area.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 40 acres in area, and you want to make a nice, perfect curved circle. How do you lay it out so that people can start putting the dirt for the mound in the right place and have this nice curve?
Yeah.
Randall, how do you do that?
How do you do it?
They weren't using a chain.
Yeah.
Were they?
I would think you'd have to be using a chain or a rope. The standard explanation is that they were using knotted ropes.
Ropes are stretchy, especially that length of a rope.
Yeah, that's going to be a long rope.
Sure is. I mean, when you look at this,
like, how do you sweep an arc with a rope that long without it catching in the dirt and plants and grass or whatever in your way as you're trying to move?
You need to clear
this arc across.
Yeah,
that thing is.
You have to clear all the trees or whatever's in there, and then
well, there's a whole lot of site preparation it has to go on.
Yeah.
And that was.
What's the diameter of this one? 1,790, it says?
I think it says 1,790. So I need to do some more.
You need to edit.
Yeah. So you got an 895 foot long rope. That's like, gotta be.
You're gonna need a rope
that long. A rope that long would weigh considerable. Yeah.
Yeah. You better be hoping it doesn't rain while you're doing it.
Yeah. I think you would need to, I don't know what, like lash long wooden poles together, and then have a whole bunch of people all along it and one guy in the middle for the pivot. Sort of walk
like a pivot sprinkler.
Yes, like a pivot sprinkler, and very slowly walk it around. And everybody, you can have a lot of people carrying it, and the guy at the end is running along, drawing a line at the end of the pole.
Yeah, the guy at the end is running.
Yes, running, sprinting.
Well, yeah, it's. It just the effort to create the rope,
right?
To do it. I mean, This is an enormous undertaking.
Yeah.
If this was the only one, it would be an enormous, impressive undertaking.
But the fact that they put this square and this circle next to each other and sort of kind of impinging upon each other so many times in these earthworks, it's just, I don't know. There's something about that to me that just,
is there a possibility it's the square or rectangular feature would be like a settlement area, and then the large circular feature would be a corral or grazing area? Any evidence for that?
Well, no, not really. I mean, no, because they don't appear that there were, if you got habitations, and you're going to have hearths, you're going to have garbage pits
and all kinds of stuff in there.
Yeah.
And there probably are, but I wonder if the middens would date back to the beginning of the mound, or perhaps, I don't know. There's so many unanswered questions.
Well, let's push on.
I'm pretty sure this is the one place we went to when we were kids.
Yeah, we've been here when we were very young.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah,
It's really well maintained.
it is.
What is it, Black Warrior River? Sounds
Yes.
And now I think this one is on the 30th parallel, right?
That seems about right.
Because I remember when I saw it,
33 degrees.
I was following that parallel around the world, looking at sites that were on it.
Really? Okay. And you found that it was on the 30th parallel.
I think somewhere there,
Yeah.
It was either 30 or 33. I think it was 30.
Okay.
I think Atlanta pretty close to 33, and it's south of there.
Yep. So they had a lot of these flattened pyramids at Moundville. And the big one, is pretty impressive, as we'll see. Now, that pond is this pond right here. So this picture was taken, if you imagine that I'm standing right here at the head of this arrow, looking out along the direction of the arrow across the pond. That's what we're doing right here. So that's the view out. And of course, again, notice the flatness, the whole area that's undoubtedly been prepared and leveled. Yeah. That's
Just once, I would like to try that mowing job.
just once.
Yeah. But yeah, that is
the day we were there over the weekend. Apparently, some punks came in there and were
doing spinnies.
Yep,
doing spinnies, wheelies, cookies, whatever you want to call them.
Classic punk pastime.
Surfing.
They really look like pedestals or foundational platforms for like you could put a structure on there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that was the case, and
But I love the way the shadows play on that. It's kind of like this face sort of sunk down in the ground.
It does look like it's like a hidden Easter Island head.
Yeah.
What are you guys looking at?
The front side of that big mound.
Right here. Yeah, I got it. I
sockets
see it.
and a nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's the bridge of the nose.
He's just peeking up out of the grass.
Right.
Kilroy.
Well, so what you're saying then is you're speculating that perhaps there's a whole big figure that's buried.
Yes, there is a giant Easter Island head down there.
Okay. All right. So that's the big mound. So that would be looking at the complex here. Where is that pond?
It's interesting too that mound is like at an angle to all the other mounds. They all seem to be fairly parallel.
Yeah, they're square with each other, and then that one's just pointing.
This one.
I wonder what that axis is. Like it's got to be significant.
Well, yeah, it's easy enough to find out. So that's this mound right here.
Yeah.
That one. And yeah, here's trudging up to the top of the big mound, and they have built a structure up on the top.
Wow.
So this is interesting thing found on Walnut Block. This was found at that site. So is this Spider Woman?
Looks like a turtle.
Well,
Spider to me.
It does. I see the spider. Yeah.
yeah. But, and then would this be the head of the spider and this would be the tail of the spider?
Or is it an ant?
Mm-hmm.
There could be 3 body sections in there. I don't
It
know.
looks like it. 1, 2,
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, and that's the head of the insect down there.
Uh-huh,
Like
right.
Yogi Bear.
Gave it a
to me.
smiley face.
A smiley face.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a Hope, is it supposed to be a Hopi complex? I don't know. I mean,
No, it's
Oh,
not.
okay.
This is in Alabama,
oh, right.
right? To my knowledge, it wasn't the Hopi there at the Moundville, Alabama.
Yeah. So I just started thinking,
However, again, this whole issue of the transcontinental trade that seemed to be going on during some of these eras.
yes.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah, now this is an impressive piece of work here.
So they built a giant platform and then built platforms
Yes.
on top of it.
Pentagonal platform.
Yeah.
Yes. And of course, they would have had to, level the site,
Yeah.
which they did. They had to create a huge leveled site. And so there's the thickness of the platform.
Oh my
Oh my
God.
God.
Look at compared to the vehicle there,
Yeah.
So that's what, 20 feet high, maybe?
at least. Yeah.
Serious. That's some serious dozer work. Yeah.
Yeah. But considering that they were doing it with wicker baskets and antler picks, I mean,
Yeah.
well, it's one thing to say, well, okay, this is an acceptable hypothesis, but it really raises questions that to me just don't seem to have any answers within the conventional framework of what was going on.
Yeah. How many
Indoor-
people do you need to do that kind of project in a reasonable amount of time? Or are they saying, well, it took them hundreds and hundreds of years?
Well, we'll actually raise that question when we get to Poverty Point.
Okay.
So this is, on top of it. And that guy looks familiar. I'm not sure who that is, just some local, I guess. But yeah, so you go back to look at this. Emerald Mound. This was looking at, trying to remember, should have a survey of this to get the cardinal directions, but this is looking, I think this is looking west, if memory serves me right. And then this is looking from one end to the other. So yeah, okay. So this is looking at the mound from the top of this mound to the far end, which I believe is the eastern end, if I remember properly. You can see the remnant of what was a mound there. If you look back here at this. So you had a mound.
Are the low border mounds still visible, or are they no longer?
I think they're only visible as sort of as shadows.
Hmm.
You can see how big it is. I mean, now when I go to and we look down, you can see. I mean, you're standing on top of the thing, looking down.
Wow.
I mean, you're up there. This is like a 30 or 40 feet. It's got to be 40 feet.
Yeah, at least
And
you're
like
at the tops of the trees. It looks like there.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's a massive undertaking.
yeah. And certainly, like, if this was excavated in part, like, they didn't. I mean, there could be anything underneath that enormous platform.
There could be.
If they did excavations, it would have been just trenches into certain parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe even just into the top mounds and not into the platform itself.
Right. And then, of course, there's
I'd love to see
Cahokia.
some drill core, like some carbon dating from drill cores or something. I think isn't that how they found out how old the LSU mounds were?
Yeah. I mean, I think he found radiocarbon datable material that they were able to find either within or below. Yeah, I think they did some coring and they found some organic material and were able to date it. I have his papers. I don't, remember exactly.
Well, sorry to change the subject, but
But doesn't that suggest that that the mound building started way before these
Yes.
cultures that they, yeah. So
And
some of them, many of them could be very, very old.
Brad, you and I have been to Cahokia, and how tall was the main mound at Cahokia?
Well,
I think
here,
it's
well,
90 feet.
yeah, it's around that. Okay, so this is an artist's rendering of Cahokia. So there was, yeah, so they had a palisade around the thing that sequestered the plaza area and this collection of mounds, and then they had this other assortment of mounds outside the palisades. And then notice again, you've got the connection here with the flowing water, which seems to have been obviously something that was critically important in the siting of where you're locating these mound complexes. Is that strictly for pragmatic use? You want to have flowing water for irrigation, for drinking, or was there also a possible other role for the flowing water and the proximity to flowing water? That's, to me, an interesting question. And I'm just showing this as a sort of a comparison to like the step pyramid at Teotihuacan. Now that's a place we need to go, guys.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I mean, this
it's close to us,
yeah,
actually.
it is. So it's a quick airline flight, but notice the ramp, like I was talking about. You see it on the earth mounds.
Yes.
Yep. Very similar aspect. And they don't know who built that place.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It looks like, kind of looks like they might be, based on this one that's torn up, that they may just be earthen mounds that sort of have been bricked on the outside.
Yeah, they've been.
Mm-hmm. Well, is it possible that they started with earth mounds and then they veneered the outside?
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just put blocks, masonry on the outside of an earthen mound. That's what it looks like.
It's a question I don't know the answer to.
Just look at the one that's torn up in the left corner there.
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, need to get there.
Again, they updated and built on a prior construction. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Could be, or it's just, as their culture became more massive and wealthier or whatever, they had more time. They added stone to their earthen mounds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I believe this probably held a gnomon pole, I'm guessing, and this would have been a plaza area, and then probably held a pole right here.
Obelisk.
And then that pole would have, cast shadows and acted as a sundial.
Wow.
And at different times of the year would illuminate different structures around here in different times of day. Well, do you remember we've been to what is Point? Not Grand Point. Crown Point.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that's a modern design, but they built that as a sundial. Right, we were there together, weren't we, on some of our Washington trips? Yeah, that's what I thought. Overlooking Grand Coulee Dam.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
That's an impressive area right there, isn't it? Just the whole viewpoint. And then when you're standing there and you think about what created that landscape and the whole phenomena and how nature, through these tremendous hydraulic catastrophes, created a configuration that was ideal for the largest poured concrete dam in North America to be right at that point where the edge of the glacier was. Pretty much right there where the glacier lobe came down, crossed where the river now, where the Grand Coulee Dam is built. That was pretty much it. That was pretty much the margin of the lobe right there. The lobe that would have caused the flow that created Grand Coulee itself. Anyways, not to get off on that, but you can see how big that mound is. That's Monk's Mound, which if I go back here, the big one here is Monk's Mound. This one. There's a story of how it got the name Monk's Mound. It escapes me at the moment. But as we zoom back, you can see how massive. And again, it kind of almost has that, it's got this truncated top, and then it's got this lower terrace, which almost, if you added a head right up here, would almost give you that kind of Sphinx profile. Look at this. Now, again, that's a big pile of dirt there. And this is on top. Now, the first thing I noticed from up top is that what it does is by going up there, you get a flat 360-degree view of the entire horizon. So what an optimum viewing platform for horizon astronomy. So they had to have been
Mississippi River floodplain out there, right?
Yep.
It's not too far. You can see the city of St. Louis there to the west, see the arch and Mississippi River going through there.
Arch.
St. Louis.
See, is it right here?
No, that's north. You'd have to look to the left.
Oh, okay. It's not in the scene here.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. You had me confused for a minute.
No, I said Mississippi River floodplain.
Now, here's some interesting research somebody could do, and I've done some preliminary stuff. When I go to this next slide here, it kind of gives you the idea. So let's see. Here's some commentary on this. This is the reassessing the history. Oh, no, we're getting into poverty point, so let's hold off until I get there. So anyways, I'm suggesting that this could have been and probably was used as a viewing platform. Because, of course, for horizon astronomy, you want to have as much as possible a flat surface. So I'm also guessing that there's quite a bit of erosion that has taken place on this surface, and that it is not nearly as flat as it would have been, in the days when it was actually being used. Okay, so poverty point.
Well, should we take a quick break before we get to poverty point?
Let's take a quick break before we
All
get
right.
to poverty. I think that's a great
Makes
idea.
sense.
All right.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Kosmographia, episode 107. Almost to the sacred number.
I got no purpose anymore. I don't get to say the episode number.
How come you don't introduce the show?
Bill,
You take
tell
over.
me.
You took his job. Actually, I took it first.
108 coming up.
108 coming up. All right, poverty point.
Poverty point.
Tell
Yeah,
us-
I think we've been there, 3 times now?
Show us the pyramids.
And our last one, we were with Mark Brink, the site manager. What's his official title again?
I think it's park manager.
Park manager, yeah. So he took us
also
on
a World Heritage site.
yeah, it's just been designated as a World Heritage Site. So we were down there. Well, that would have been on our same trip, right? We went through there with George
That's right.
Howard, and Malcolm. So we went through there and got the tour from Mark Brink, park manager. He took us out. We were pretty much, it was an exclusive trip.
That
Just
was
our
not
group.
even a year ago, man.
Wasn't even a year ago.
That's hard to believe.
I know.
So
But we've
what's
been there.
happened
That
in
was our
23. Whoa.
Yeah, it's our 3rd time there. So some of the papers, there's some very interesting work. One of the more recent papers is called Reassessing the History of the Poverty Point Phenomenon, a case study from the Jaketown site in Mississippi, not too far away, kind of to the northeast of Poverty Point. So this is what he says. Reading, this is 2022. This is from his dissertation, right? So it's, and it's called, I find that word reassessing to be very suggestive. Towards the end of the late Archaic period, which was from 4,800 years ago to 3,000 years, calendar years before present. right? 4,800 to 3,000. So we're looking at about 1,800 year period there. This is what's called the late Archaic period. So somewhere between 3,600 and 3,300 years ago, Native Americans engineered a colossal earthwork complex that covers approximately 200 hectares. 200 hectares works out to be about 494.2 acres. So it's a pretty big complex. So it's in Northeast Louisiana. Yes, today it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site known as Poverty Point. The Poverty Point was the name of a farm, or was a little town or community that was there. It took its name from something that was pre-existing. It might have been a plantation. I think it was a plantation. I believe that's what it was. I think it was a plantation there in Northwest Louisiana that was called Poverty Point. I don't know why it was called Poverty Point, but the plantation, but it gets the mound complex gets its name from the name of the plantation that was there when it was discovered. Now, the plantation obviously is not as old as the mounds. So it is the namesake for a material culture pattern documented to varying degrees at sites throughout the lower Mississippi Valley. However, the nature of interactions between these sites and the type site, which would be Poverty Point, is poorly understood. So, in other words, what they're getting at here is there's a bunch of these sites in western Mississippi, northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas that look like they were all pretty much built within the same period of a couple of hundred years. And they call it the Poverty Point Complex because it encompasses all of these other outlying sites as well. And from that assumption, the working assumption is that Poverty Point was the oldest of the sites and created the template or the prototypical pattern from which the rest of the sites more or less mimic. Okay, but now we get to the reassessment part of it here. However, the nature of interactions between these sites and the type site, that is Poverty Point, is poorly understood. The people who constructed the Poverty Point site lived on wild food resources. They hunted, fished, and gathered food from the river bottoms and surrounding woodlands more than 1,000 years before food production became widespread in the region. So let's picture, we're looking at indigenous peoples, presumably, who made their living and existed by hunting, fishing, and gathering food. Now, the assumption is that these people who ordinarily were hunting and fishing and gathering food were the ones who constructed Poverty Point, and presumably the outlying sites who based their pattern upon the template of Poverty Point. But then he goes on to say in this dissertation that the level of socio-political organization required to create such a place contradicts anthropological theories regarding the social structure of foraging societies. So what he's doing here is he's acknowledging, wait a second, what we know about foraging societies is it contradicts the level of socio-political organization that would have to exist in order to create a site of this magnitude. All right. Consequently, the Poverty Point site is a globally relevant example of highly complex behavior by small-scale societies that lack obvious signs of social hierarchy. And again, because of the complex level of organization, the assumption would be that such an undertaking on this scale would require some level of social hierarchy. You got to have somebody conceiving of it. You've got to have labor. You have to have diversified labor. You have to have, and as you're going to find out, there were large timber hinges at Poverty Point. You asked earlier about that. There were. I think there were actually, we'll get to that. I think there were 60 of them.
Oh,
This site.
Wow.
Yeah. So in the non-emotive terms of academia, what he's saying is, wait a second here. When we actually start thinking about it, we seem to have a contradiction going on here. On the one hand, we're talking about foraging societies that live by hunting, fishing, and gathering. And in that model, we don't have complex levels of social organization or hierarchies of social control or any of the thing that one would assume would be necessary, for example, to organize the enormous pool of labor to undertake such a project. So this is interesting because this has kind of been something that academia has kind of avoided addressing this question. Wait a second, aren't there some inconsistencies here in our assumptions? The mounds at Poverty Point were among the first built in the eastern woodlands after a millennium-long hiatus, and their enormous scale was unlike anything that came before and matched those of Mississippian chiefdoms 2 millennia later. And let's go to, let me pull this on over, and let's look at the ground plan here of...
I think the same question can be asked of what they've said about the Göbekli Tepe, right? It's the same problem.
Same problem.
You have
Yes.
like what we know of basic foraging societies don't seem like they would build these kinds of structures.
That's right.
But that's the story they're going with.
That's the story they're going with. Let me get to... okay.
Hunter-gatherers 2.0.
Okay, so we're going to do another share screen. Okay, good. This is what we want to look at. So this is, a digital model of the mound complex. Here's the large mound A, and then you have the plaza, and you have this multi-ringed structure, which is interesting. And then there are passageways through the multi-ringed structure. Now, you have this bayou with this creek that comes by here, and it would look like, the question then becomes, was this ever a completed structure? I think the opinion now is that it probably wasn't, but I don't know if it's a settled matter. Because for one thing, if it was, then it means that this thing is really old.
Is that sloped? Is it an amphitheater, or is it flat and just ridged?
It's flat and ridged.
Okay.
Right. And then there's scattered mounds around. And so what intrigued me when I was there was the temporal relation between the construction of the mounds and the erosion that you can see. Like, obviously, right up here, you see there's a gully that's been eroded across the ringed mounds. And so, obviously, then the mounds were already there if they, unless they stopped at the gully. And we weren't able to ascertain that when we were there. But it looks to me like the gully would have been after the mounds were built and would have breached the mounds. And then
sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Kyle.
Well, it also looks like the creek on the northern part actually has moved into the mound structure a little bit.
Yes.
Because you can see tiny little pieces of mound like going right up to the bank.
Mm-hmm.
On the very top of those
right up in here.
Yes.
Yeah, and then look at this gully that looks like it's incised through the mounds.
Yeah.
So to better understand the events that led to the creation of the Poverty Point site and the historical processes that comprised the poorly understood Poverty Point phenomena, I conducted 4 research expeditions at the Jaketown site in west central Mississippi. Jaketown site, covering approximately 85 hectares, is the largest Poverty Point affiliated site outside the type site. Jaketown also has the most earthworks of any Poverty Point affiliated site other than the type site, which again is Poverty Point. There have been 15 mounds documented at Jaketown, including at least 3 late Archaic period constructions. Furthermore, The material assemblage documented at Jaketown shows a high degree of similarity with the type site. These factors combine to make Jaketown a critical site for understanding the historical processes that led to the creation of the Poverty Point site. And then he goes on to say that our findings support an inversion of most extant models. Communities throughout this would be lower Mississippi Valley, the LMV, like the one at Jaketown, did not receive their cultural identity from the Poverty Point site. Rather, they had their own traditions, practices, and histories that converged on Poverty Point. So in other words, you had this whole community of these things, and then apparently somehow that community was able to be organized on this gigantic scale in order to create Poverty Point. In this model, Poverty Point is not a source of outward diffusion, but an end point for multiple streams of Native American history. It was a cultural sink where disparate histories combined to form one of the most unique archaeological signatures in the world. The need for an alternative framing is apparent after acknowledging the flaws of typological frameworks. I found that using Native American philosophies as theory is a useful approach. Relying on insights from American Indian scholars, the burst of mound building at Jaketown circa 3400 calibrated BP, you could look at CAL as being either calendar or calibrated, right? Because in order to fit it to the calendar, you have to calibrate, right? But think of this as 3,400 calendar years before present was a form of communal performance meant to restore balance to relations that were in flux, manifested as environmental volatility, which is well documented at Jaketown and throughout the lower Mississippi Valley.
That's really strange. I mean, is there any precedent for that happening anywhere else? I mean,
yeah, he's saying that they were having environmental problems, and so a bunch of different communities came together and said, to fix this, we can all get in harmony with each other and build mound projects.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what it sounds like he's saying.
Okay, yeah. At 1400 BC ish.
Yes. But Jaketown turned out to be 400 years older than Poverty Point.
Oh.
All right, so this is from the book I recommended last time, Hidden Cities by Roger Kennedy. When one comes on foot into the open space at Poverty Point, there is a powerful impulse to seek definition of its huge extent by finding the bounds set by the outer ring and to get some sense of scale from its hulking mound. But if one approaches Poverty Point from the air after surveying the archaeology of the Louisiana and Mississippi Delta land, it is the innermost ring which rivets attention. It is 2,000 feet in diameter, appearing to be a half circle. This is almost exactly the configuration and the size which the aerial archaeologist can find in at least 5 other earthworks created in the Mississippi floodplain. Now, none of the things we've been looking at so far have been in the Mississippi floodplain. They're in the Mississippi River Valley because the Ohio is tributary to the Mississippi, but they were all, well, not Cahokia. Cahokia was in the Mississippi Valley, but it was not in the floodplain. All of which may have been built about the same time. In other words, not only were the Indians of 4,000 years ago sufficiently organized to build the huge, even and geometric ring at Poverty Point, they were also capable of duplicating it across great distances. And then here's a diagrammatic representation of the complex. And you can see the causeways or the apertures in the rings. And there would have been one leading right up to the big mound. There was a plaza. It held a gnomon pole that would have been a sundial. Now, the question again is, was the embankment here and the bayou here, and they built up and stopped at the embankment? Or was there erosion?
Was it a complete
here?
ring?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. So here's an aerial photo. You see, here's the big, there was a bunch of other smaller mounds again here as well.
In the diagram, it looked like there were huts or mounds on the ridges.
Yeah, like a bunch of little mounds.
Yes. I mean, they were very complicated structures.
They're like hut roofs.
This is a good question.
Almost like I don't know, like it makes me think of a calendar or some with all those little mounds on top, something.
Well, there's a lot of studies so far that I have not yet digested.
It also looks like an amphitheater or a.
Yes, it does look like an amphitheater. Tallest mound more than 70 feet. 640 feet in width. Look, ball court. There was a ball court mound. Well,
sacrifice ball.
All right, so it's a sports. That's what it is.
Yeah, but the mound is over here.
I know. Yeah.
Well, okay, so we've got ball court mounds in the Yucatan, the Mayans. We have ball court mound at Brad, help me out. Wupatki. And now if we had a ball court mound here, what is this saying? Was this cultural continuity then?
Yeah, they're talking to each other, at least.
Yeah. I mean, would there be like the home team and then they would head out to Wupatki to battle them, and then they would, whoever won that would go down and
play the Mayans.
Play the Mayans, yeah.
I'm looking at a diagram that shows it may be natural, but like a mound on the other side of the river, almost directly across from the big mound. I guess out there in the woods, in the trees. Yeah, I'm looking at this diagram that I'm seeing here. But it's drawn in the same way that the natural rays, like the hills in the distance, are drawn.
Hey, now check this out. Okay, we've got 1,950 feet showing the distance across the plaza. But then, and this has got to be an estimate here because look, because of the erosion and destruction that's taken place, is it possible to measure with precision what the original diameter would have been? But this is showing 3,950 feet. All you got to do is add 10 feet and you've got 3,960 feet. Right? Divide that by 100, and you've got 39.6 feet, which is the radius of the bluestone circle at Stonehenge. And I don't know how much we've talked about evidence suggesting that they were using feet at Stonehenge. But that 3960, if you double it, 3960 was also the width of St. Mary's Chapel at Glastonbury. Okay, so 39.6 feet, and add 10 feet to this, and you'd have 3,960 feet.
Change it to miles.
And what?
Change it to miles.
Change it to miles. 3960 divided by 5,280. So it's just a kilometer is 3,280 feet, and a mile is 5,280 feet. So it's 5,280 feet. If I divide that by 3960, say, then 1.33. So not
3960 is the Earth radius. So I was just completing that if you weren't hearing it.
Oh, in miles.
Yeah.
Well, did you get that, Russ? What Brad said? In miles, the radius of the Earth is 3,960 feet. Except that the polar radius of the Earth is 7,900, which means, diameter is 7,900, which means the polar radius is 3,950 miles.
Right on it. Yeah.
Right on it. So was there some kind of Earth symbolism going on here? Of course,
Yeah.
let's not go
And
there.
again, they're using the feet and the mile, and they've measured the Earth, or they have at least carried forward this knowledge from somebody else who did it a long time ago or something.
Is what it seems like.
Yeah. There's implication. So the idea that there's a connection here with the Maya, they did the same thing. They seem to have been the inheritors of very advanced astronomical and Earth knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And they did calculations in deep time, which is just, again, so the idea of these people being, what was the term the guy used? Foragers. And yet coming together to build projects like this.
Well, let's get into some of this. There's some interesting questions raised in some recent papers. Just this last month in the journal Antiquity, there was an article about Poverty Point. This was, this was published. Let's see my reference here. Convergence at Poverty Point, a revised chronology of the late archaic lower Mississippi Valley, just published in December, last month in Antiquity. So this is pretty much brand new research here. And so they say the Poverty Point site, located in the lower Mississippi Valley of the southeastern United States, is commonly considered a center of innovation that exported new material culture, practices, and identity to presumably contemporaneous sites in the region. Recent radiocarbon data, however, show that Jaketown, previously interpreted as a peripheral expression of Poverty Point culture, is earlier than the type site. Here, we present the late archaic Poverty Point culture of the lower Mississippi Valley as an example of how typological approaches to diffusion can obstruct archaeological research and obscure historical narrative. We offer a revised accelerator mass spectrometry dated chronology of the Jaketown site, a late archaic earthwork complex in western central Mississippi. Though it has for a long time been central to archaeological theory, critical engagement with cultural diffusion models has receded in recent decades. Following diffusionist models, Poverty Point, located in northeastern Louisiana, some 100 kilometers or 60 miles southwest of Jaketown, was usually interpreted as the type site of the Poverty Point culture and the source of a suite of cultural innovations observed at presumably contemporaneous sites in the region. Chronostratigraphic data from Jaketown show that the site's inhabitants were engaging in practices typically associated with the so-called Poverty Point culture by 3,500 to 4,000 years before present. These dates are conservatively 400 years earlier than the oldest dates derived from the Poverty Point site. Then describing the physical parameters of the site itself. Poverty Point is a sprawling complex of geometric earthworks covering approximately 200 hectares in northeastern Louisiana. Its builders moved an estimated 1 million cubic meters of earth to create the monumental landscape. That's a lot of dirt.
Wow.
Mound A is among the largest mounds in North America, comprising approximately 238,500 cubic meters of earth, and was built in no more than 90 days. Recent work demonstrates that at least one segment of the iconic concentric ridges that they've studied, West Ridge 3, was also built very rapidly. Geophysical survey has identified, 36 timber post circles up to 62 meters in diameter and 25 hectares area around the anthropogenic plaza, further demonstrating the site's complex construction history. So 62 times 3.28, that means you're looking at over 200 feet in diameter, and there were 36 of these timber hinges that were up to 200 feet in diameter, outlying around the central earthen complex. How much work would have been involved just in that? Okay, so forager groups modified the landscape at Poverty Point to fit their social and cultural needs. And while some scholars assumed that such coordination would be possible only under a centralized hierarchical political system, there is no evidence of social hierarchy at Poverty Point. The scale of earth moving at Poverty Point, in addition to the metric tons of stone brought there from sources spanning half the North American continent, suggests forms of social organization and leadership that contradict traditional models of foraging groups. Well, you don't say. So now I wrote this. Let's consider the implications of a 90-day. Now, how do they know 90? Well, because they've taken core samples. And they find, because again, the mound was done in layering. Now, if you do build a layer and you leave it for 2 weeks, you're going to have stuff growing on it, aren't you? And that stuff is going to, then you put another layer on, that's going to leave a detectable biological layer in the layer, deposit in the layers of soil, right? There was no such thing found, okay, in any of it. They didn't find any evidence that there had been any hiatus between there was no evidence, for example, of rainfall on any of the surfaces. So in other words, you do a layer, and if the surface is exposed to the weather, Mississippi Valley, lower Mississippi Valley is going to get at least a couple of good drenches each month. But none of the layers had any evidence of any rainfall falling on them, right? There was no spread in the radiocarbon dating of the organic material pulled out of here, right? So let's consider, though, the implications. And when we were there, Mark Brink told us that maybe even this was conservative. It might have been 2 months that it took, 60 days. But we'll go with 90, okay? Let's consider the implications of a 90-day construction time for the earthworks at Poverty Point. Taking only Mound A, comprised of 238,500 cubic meters of earth, this is equivalent to about 8,586,000 cubic feet of earth. Now let's assume, if you've got a cubic foot of earth that's moist, it can weigh upwards of 80, 90, even 100 pounds. You ever hoisted a 90-pound bag of concrete mix? You know how you know how heavy that is, right? Excuse me.
Yeah, he went straight into job site language there.
There you went.
I instantly yes. Sorry, guys.
It's all right. Yes, they're heavy.
They're heavy. Okay, so now if you're transporting manually, you're probably not going to want to, look, when you do maneuvers and you're carrying a 50-pound backpack, that's considered to be pretty heavy, right? So let's assume in most of the pictures you see of them, actually engaged in the work of construction, they're carrying baskets, wicker baskets, right? Now let's be generous and say that they can have a wicker basket that has a half a cubic foot of earth in it, right? Okay, so think about that. If you've got 8,586,000 cubic feet of earth, okay, let's see what that works out to. 8,586,000 cubic feet. So if you then divide that into actual loads, let's see, 586 times.
It's like 17 million or something.
Yeah, it's times 2. Yeah, 17. It's over 17 million loads of Earth. Okay, so assuming
So how many? Yeah, so in 90 days.
Okay, so a strong man, let's say a strong man could carry that kind of weight for some distance, but an average person would do well to carry, even up to half a cubic foot. Okay, so assuming then that a container for manual soil transport contains about a half cubic foot, which could be somewhat comfortably carried by an average person over a modest distance, we're talking about more than 17 million trips from the source of the soil to the site of the large mound. Let's say there's 2,160 hours in 3 months, which is what it is. That works out to be nearly 8,000 trips per hour. 24 hours a day round the clock for 3 months. Or 133 trips per minute. Means every minute somebody's dumping a cubic foot of earth in order to build that mound.
And
Of 8 million.
I think we could assume that they were only working during the day, right? I mean, do you think they were doing this at night? Give them 24 hours? Or are we going to say 10?
Well, yeah, I mean, so we could double this. We could double all these numbers.
Double it.
So you're talking about 266 trip per minute. Per minute,
yeah.
Every minute, 133 people had to empty their load of earth to the pyramid site, and that's 24 hours a day, round the clock, for 3 months. Now,
Not
how the
buying
hell?
it.
What are we talking about here?
Not buying it.
Bigger baskets.
And then we have to separately factor in the 761,500 cubic meters of soil for the multi-ringed part of the earthwork construction at Poverty Point. This is 27,414,000 cubic feet, or almost 55 million basketfuls of earth, again, assuming a half cubic foot per basket. And this does not include the many tons of stone brought from far-flung sources spanning half the North American continent. And then I asked the question, and all of this done by foragers? Here's my question then. How the hell is such a thing even possible? Now, to me, we get into this, and this is confronting us with a pretty serious historical conundrum here.
Who's feeding them?
Yeah, who's feeding them?
Yeah. If you've got all of your foragers carrying dirt, who is foraging?
Who's foraging?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, who's keeping up the shelter and providing the clothing? I mean, the questions
Who's
that it
making the
raised.
baskets?
Yeah, who's making the baskets? Right.
Can a wicker basket carry 40 pounds of dirt? I don't know. Maybe they're strong.
Yeah. So it boggles the mind, and it really, to me, raises questions that, to me, demonstrate beyond any shadow of a doubt that, mainstream archaeology is far, far from having all the answers.
Absolutely.
But they're still going to attack Graham Hancock as a pseudo-archaeologist because he dares to ask questions about the glaring contradictions in the conventional models. But we all know that if you do that, you're obviously a racist and a white supremacist. So that's how we identify racists and white supremacists, is if they question the dogmas of modern archaeological theory. Right. So should we go? How much time we got left? Should we go on?
I want to know more.
Let's look. Let's learn more.
Yeah, we got
10,
at least
minutes.
10 or 15 minutes. Yeah.
Let's keep going then.
Tell me more.
Lake George Group, Holly Bluff, Mississippi. I mean, look at this. Lake George Group, Holly Bluff, Mississippi. I mean, look at this.
Yep, definitely looks like hunter-gatherer site to me.
Yeah. Well, what they had deer blinds up on top of the truncated pyramids.
Yeah.
Wasn't that it?
Yeah. It's basically it's hunter-gatherers saying, you know what, let's move the river to
And trap the deer in this square so that they're easier to catch.
So that we don't have to hunt and gather.
Well, I mean, now they could have,
That's just advanced hunter-gathering. Because you start not having to hunt and gather at all because you're just a sophisticated hunter-gatherer.
Uh-huh. Well, I guess you could have done...
All of your crops are right there, and all of your animals are right there.
And you could have done fishing, perhaps, in the Menard Mounds. Again, always proximal to water.
This is cool.
Wow. Now, this is totally cool. I mean, it's almost like we're getting more into almost like artwork or architecture or something here. I mean, what the hell is going on here?
And what's the source of the water? Did they connect that to a river? Or did they just dig down until there was water?
I don't know, but each one of these things is worthy of deeper research. And I mean, look, I think if there's any takeaway out of this, it's like, this is a whole phenomena that we barely even are beginning to understand what was going on here.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn and so many questions raised by all of this. The Fitzhugh Mound in Louisiana, circa 1200 AD. And look, here's your long barrow. Beautiful example of that.
And is that body of water that it goes through, is it man-made, or did they...
I'm going to guess. I would guess, my first guess would be that these were the borrow pits from which they excavated the earth in the creation of the mounds and the long barrow. And this is
the lungs and the spine.
Mm-hmm. Well, it kind of looks like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then here's a little twist where you've got these structures connecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, interconnectedness of the Mound Bottom, Kingston Springs.
There's another one where there's one tilted structure.
God.
Well, okay, so given that the maps are oriented to the cardinal directions, this suggests to me
impressive.
That the tilting has to have been astronomically determined.
That's what I'm thinking,
Exactly,
So they aligned everything north-south, and then they tilted one for some...
Mm-hmm.
But, that could be solstitial or maybe marker. I mean, I don't know if it's tilted enough.
Okay, so you're looking towards the southeast, so it would have been a sunrise. I wonder if it was a lunar. Could have been lunar. Again, the research I haven't done is take these maps and lay them out and determine the azimuths of risings and settings. First of all, what you do is you determine the azimuth of like this orientation and see where does that intersect the horizon. And then you could open up some astronomy software and move through the course of a year and see if there's anything significant rising. If you're looking to the east, you're going to be seeing rising, and you're looking to the west, you're going to be setting. It could have been any number of things. It could have been the Pleiades were often played an important role. Rising and setting of Pleiades were known to have been of significance to many Native American peoples.
But look at the date on this one. This is
1200 AD.
This is 2,000 years after the other ones.
Yeah.
Right? Or more.
If these dates
are correct.
Correct.
Right. And is that a natural bend in a river, or did they make that canal again?
Right. I mean, if it's not a natural bend in the river, and see, so there what we need to do is go right now, probably utilizing, Google Earth, Google Maps, the National Map Viewer, and really get in and start doing some research that I haven't done yet. I've collected this stuff together into one place, so it's, it would be, ready to start doing that kind of research. I just haven't had the time.
Yeah, of course. There's just so many questions for each site. It's just so amazing.
I know.
Look at that.
Now, these are all like parallel to the river, but almost like a 45-degree angle.
Uh-huh.
And again, is the river modified, or is that a canal? Is it
Well, the straightness of it,
Yeah,
is
it's
that
very straight.
natural?
Right.
Yeah, and I'm looking like at these, and are we assuming that this are structures, like wooden structures on top of the truncated mounds, or are they additional smaller
mounds up there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Capstones.
Wow.
What?
Hinges.
Yeah, those are.
Mm-hmm. And you can see little humans in here for scale.
Is this what they built out into the river?
Is that Brad?
It's Brad out there.
Yeah, it is. Yep. Brad, and I'm not sure who's with him.
That's me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because the baseball cap is the giveaway, right?
Right.
Oh, wow. That's cool. The man in the moon.
Yeah. I mean, is there some kind of like perhaps lunar significance to this? So you've got this arched, raised, elongated mound, kind of almost like an arched barrow. And then you have this
Crescent of water.
Yeah.
You got the pit. Yeah.
And I'm assuming the pit would have been where most of the earth came from. Looks like this mound is oriented to the cardinal directions, but the rest of them, well, that one and this one, but then you've got these, and again, I don't know how tall, if you're back there with the mounds still existent, obviously this looked like the biggest one. So if you were on top of this, could you have sighted over some of these other mounds to various astronomical sites?
Or maybe it was the other way around. You're on the lower one looking past the tall one. It's sticking up above the horizon. It's like I don't know.
What?
Yeah. And the thing that you don't so much appreciate just looking at this is that these plaza areas and the building sites were almost in all cases perfectly leveled over many, many acres. And that had to take place before the construction of the mounds themselves. So there's a whole lot of prep work.
That's a snake that has swallowed a mound.
He's regretting it. You can
Yeah.
tell.
That's
So yeah, this is the Perkins site, Mississippi, unknown date. So these two are very similar, but they're different. You got the Maggie complex and the alligator mounds. So, again, just like you see in Central America, you've got the mounds are facing onto this plaza area. Now, what went on in this plaza area? And did it hold a gnomon pole, or were there hinges out here? I mean, again, there's so much we don't know.
Yep, there's that terraced
Yep.
mound you've been pointing out.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of how it's the sort of the downtown effect with a lot of ancient sites where once they do LiDAR, they see that there were all these structures surrounding these things that are still there.
Yeah.
Sort of just the downtown area. You're seeing the remnants of the big structures, but all around this people lived in large numbers.
Well, it would certainly seem to be the case because, I mean, obviously you had to have a lot of people to build these things.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. So they dug this canal.
Yeah, that's it's sort of how I imagine it. Is we got this big plaza, these big enclosures with these waterworks, these large mound structures, and then and that was the middle of the.
Mm-hmm.
So these could be towns. I don't know.
Except that there weren't people living in them.
Not in the mounds, right? But
Right.
maybe around the area. Yeah, that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. So like these would be the I don't know, the equivalent I guess we would have is this is the courthouse and the library and the, this is the big communal structures here in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Look at this one here. Looks like sort of a stepped pyramid, and then it's got a flat top with a conical pyramid on it.
Wow.
Now, what in the hell do you make of this?
Shrooms.
Wow. Shrooms, yeah.
Shrooms. Definitely.
It's interesting that's the first thing that came to your mind, but
That's
it all. I mean, it also, it has looks like a strange kind of writing.
well, it does kind of, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right, this next one is one that just completely freaks me out. Wow.
Yep.
man. Now that
Big Tonys, huh?
I mean,
crop circles.
It does
I've
kind
seen
of crop
some
circles
that look like this.
And yeah. It looks like a diagram of something.
it doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at this and I go, okay, is this just, like, hey guys, let's do this. It'd be cool if we just put this here.
Right.
Or is there some systematic rationale behind this? I mean, I can't quite fathom it. And the amount of work that we're seeing that was going on in pre-Columbian America is utterly astonishing.
The isolation of those little mounds out in all that water, like, makes it where the only, without bridges or something, the only access is to walk down those long, narrow.
Yeah.
Well, they're completely islands. I mean, there is no place to get to them without a bridge.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But is it? I'm just curious if the water is a possibility, or are they for sure that there was water in these areas?
Yes. Well, yeah, because you can see, the sediment, is consistent with being the bottom of a pool.
Man. What does it mean?
What? Yeah. What are they pointing at? Stars?
Yeah.
Planets? Strange.
And again, the perfect circles. So, this is in Florida now. And so you've got these groups, whoever these people were, they obviously knew some kind of level of geometry, and they're able to build these vast circles. What's the distance from Florida up to Newark? I don't know, but that's got to be 1,000 miles, I'm thinking.
And this is 2000 BC.
Yeah.
Very old.
Yes, very old. So. So this is Shiloh. This is in Tennessee. So, these are the dates that are given in the literature, and I don't necessarily know if I, accept that without a little bit of critical thought. I would say, okay, how are these dated? Is it a convincing, or is it just speculative?
Or is it possibly based on, occupation by later peoples, not the original builders?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, like with Serpent Mound, I think, they did a trench in the mound and they found artifacts that are consistent with an already established group at a
Yeah, the
certain
woodland.
time period. Yeah. And then they're just like, wow, they built them out.
Right.
Yeah, right. So then we get to the Portsmouth works. So this is from a very interesting article that appeared in Popular Astronomy back in 1933 by an astronomer named Stansbury Hagar. So this is what he's talking about, the Portsmouth works, which is going back up to Ohio. He says, until about a century ago, let me see, until about a century ago, a series of earthworks approximating 10 miles in length extended through the city of Portsmouth, Ohio, the adjacent country on the east, and 2 parts of Kentucky across the Ohio River. These earthworks were constructed by the unknown pre-Columbian people whose remains cover the Ohio and Mississippi valleys and a large part of the adjoining states. These constructions have now been entirely destroyed, except a horseshoe-shaped mound preserved by the wisdom and generosity of Dr. Hempstead. Hempstead, important clue there. And a group of small mounds near the center of the main avenue, some formless remains in the nearby cemetery, and the square at the western end.
Wait, why is this name an important clue?
Hempstead. But the plan of the works has been definitely established by 3 independent surveys made by competent surveyors while the works were still complete or nearly so, and these surveys agree except in minor details. So, among the 1,000 groups of earthworks erected by the mound builders, the plan of the Portsmouth works is unique. Most of all of them, it challenges attention by the striking peculiarity of its design. It suggests to the eye the figure of a gigantic serpent, curving like a bow from the 4 circles at its head to the square and smaller avenues at its tail, which are almost due west of the head. Apparently, then, our only recourse is to ascertain whether the plan of the works reveals a definite design. If so, what was its significance? And does that significance provide an adequate motive to explain the enormous labor expended on the works as a whole?
So this is the implication we're seeing here that the mound builder culture survived for 3,000 years.
Yes, that would be the implication. Yes,
Yeah.
or that it was in waves, but
Waves.
like there was a flurry of activity. It was then interrupted by something. There was a passage of time, and then another group picked up where the previous group left off.
That's very
It
like
continued
Egypt.
the work.
Egypt did this too. They had
Mm-hmm.
dynasties, and then there were intermediary periods, and more dynasties,
Mm-hmm.
and waves of construction and destruction.
Waves of construction and destruction. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Were you going to cover the other little interesting thing about Shiloh back there? I thought you were going to end up on that because, we're
We got to wrap it
20
up.
minutes past our 10 minutes.
we are. Okay, well, I didn't have that slide handy,
No.
so I could save it for 108. But yeah,
Okay.
Shiloh's a good one because of yes. Okay. Well, we'll end up with Portsmouth because Portsmouth is one hell of an impressive structure. So the total length of the main avenue, as represented by Squire and Davis plan, and including the avenues at the tail, if you look down here, follow it from the multi-ringed circle here, crosses the Ohio, comes up here. There's a collection of mound structures up here, and this is where you have this almost like he was saying, this suggested the head of a serpent. That comes down here, and then it crossed the river again, and this was part of the complex here with a square and long barrows attached to the square. So he says here that the main avenue, okay, and including the avenues at the tail, is about 8 miles. But if we include the missing parts of the avenue, which doubtless have been destroyed, and the 2 crossings of the Ohio River, its length is closer to 10 miles. The secondary avenues at the head and center of the walls of the 4 circles down here. And the Crescent Mound contributed about 6 miles to the length of the earthworks. So that if we double the length of the avenue for the double wall and add the earthworks just named, the total length of the earthworks in the works was over 24 miles. The dimensions of the works indicate the tremendous labor involved in their construction by a people who, to the best of our knowledge, conveyed thither the whole of the necessary earth in wicker baskets. It is self-evident that no such labor would or could be expended without some adequate motive, and that the works were not haphazard constructions, but had some definite significance associated with that motive. And here's here's from Squire and Davis's survey. You can see the multi-ringed structure down here, the double-walled avenue crossing the river. Now, was there a bridge here at one time? And I'd be interested to see how this configures in with the floodplain, because it's very possible that we're looking at these embankments here and here, that this, would be the underfit stream, because we know that post-glacial meltwater flows in the Ohio Valley were sometimes more than 200 feet deeper than the modern floodplain. So it looks like they built this thing on the floodplain. So they, at some point, see, here's the thing. If we don't accept that these things were just each the result of an isolated phenomena, but behind all of this, I mean, are we reasonable to speculate that there might have been a grand plan to all of this? I don't see how we can conclude otherwise. In other words, each of these sites was not conceived and executed in isolation from all of the others, but was in fact part of a much grander plan that covered, half of America.
Yeah, or at least some kind of common culture, because of the similarity in structure types and construction types. That yes, there was that they have something in common, that the culture continues across all these sites. They're not built by isolated groups of people at each place.
Right. So this is the what you're calling square A down here, which is 15 acres.
Those are definitely Circes.
Yeah, with the double walls. You mean like the avenues?
Yes. Yeah. Very similar to these structures they have in the UK that no one really knows what they were for. These long, narrow, enclosed spaces. Yeah.
And this is, let's see, the width here of this one is 210 feet. So that's not like you're walking down a little garden path with some raised mounds on you. This is a huge structure. Yeah. And then again, you see the erosion here that's cut across. So I would think that the erosion was subsequent to the building of the mounds. So, and then let's look at the ringed earthwork structure. Okay, so
that's where the impact happened.
Uh-huh. So yeah, this is that's quite a complex right there. An outer ring approximately 1,490 feet in diameter.
Sort of Atlantean.
That's what I was thinking about. A lot of these with the water and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The rings and the water and the rings. Yeah. Very interesting.
I agree. Yes. Concentric rings, part of the Portsmouth earthwork complex. And he says here, Stansberry goes on to say that there's an unmistakable serpent head with 4 circles, central mound, and 4 intersecting avenues appears on a conventionalized copper design from the Hopewell Mound, supporting the association of these features of the Portsmouth works with the head of a serpent. The elements of the design of the works seem to be repeated on shell gorgets exhumed within the works themselves, and in mounds of Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Missouri. The conventional design inscribed upon them represents a plumed rattlesnake coiled around the outer rim. The head is formed by concentric circles that surround an inner ring, and we are surrounded by an outer band with small circular dots at frequent and regular intervals, and plumes issue from the head. So maybe that's where we should leave it for now, except we'll show this at Stonehenge, an avenue with parallel embankments. Look, clusters of... how can we not see the parallels and similarities? Transatlantic, across...
That's amazing.
Two sides of the ocean. Yeah.
Yep.
There's something going on here. And no, I'm sorry. The mainstream guys do not have it figured out. I think we can categorically state that. But for whatever reason, they want to defend their turf and dissuade any of those who are not accepting and swallowing the dogmas of history and censoring them. But why? What's the motive there? Why be so afraid of the fact that there may be more to our past and our history than we've even begun to suspect? Anyways, I suppose we'll curtail it there. If you want, for 108, we can actually pick this up. I'm glad you brought up Atlantis, because I think that will be a good place to kind of return back to complete the cycle. Because we kind of started with Atlantis, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to this one, because I got some more surprises for you guys.
All right. I like it. Very good.
Thanks, Randall. Great show.
Thank you.
RandallCarlson.com. Sign up for the newsletter.
Get your cool Cosmographia
Please do.
caps.
Yeah, look at that hat Brad's got on.
And stay tuned for an announcement. I'm going with Rumble. That looks pretty definite now. I'm going to do a program on Rumble. So, I'll be able to fill in the gaps. And you guys, we're having to take a break from Kosmographia, but we're going to figure out how to keep something going. Bradley and I anyway, but Russ and Kyle, I know you guys have got a hectic schedule of really valuable, cool things coming up that you got to deal with. So, get me on your show and we can carry out some of these.
We'll finally get to have Randall back on our show as a guest.
What about me? I want you to tell me what was going on here with all this.
Mike, wait a minute. Yeah, let's not forget about Mike.
Yeah, let's not forget about Mike.
Yeah, what about me? I heard him say.
Mike, you can go back to total normality.
Back to NSA.
This was your little excursion into the etheric realms,
of
Mike.
Abnormality.
4-year excursion into extra normality.
I don't know. Mike might be getting. Mike, are you getting to the point where you're starting to get comfortable out in the realms of weirdness?
Well, that and the fame, it's
the
fame.
He's figured out how to be totally normal in the middle of all this weirdness. It is. I think it's just completely cemented his normality. He's got it as a shield.
That's what it. Yeah, I think
strengthened it. He has not become more abnormal. He's become more normal.
By
hanging out with us.
At least until the day he eats a mushroom. But we'll set that aside for now.
Well, definitely. Hey, listen. If you're going to get Mike to do some shrooms, we can come back on for a Cosmographia episode for that.
Okay. For sure. Okay.
All right, we'll see you guys for 108.
All right.
Great show.
Right,
good night, everybody.
Good night.
Oh, I should have brought us before we concluded. I should have brought us back to full screen. Sorry.
Well, there we go.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Now we're at full screen. Rattle.
Okay.